It's great to be here. I'm Tom Pauken, was in the Reagan administration, was state chairman of the Texas Republican Party when we went to minority to majority, and I think this is really a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. Get back to a policy-driven conservative approach. More recently, I served as chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission. I led an effort to get back to local control of education, more opportunities for vocational education, multiple pathways to a high school degree, rather than this sort of top-down teaching to the test mindset that had set in and was reflected in Austin and in Washington. On the issue of differences between Greg Abbott and myself, there are multiple. I led the fight against Ann Richards when she tried to put in the Robin Hood school finance scheme, which takes local property taxes, moves them to other districts. That's 374 districts. It's seen $1.1 million go from your districts elsewhere. There's a better way to fund the property poor districts. We defeated it when she tried to put it in as a constitutional amendment. 2 governors later, it's still there. Greg defends it as legal and constitutional. My judgment, it's an unconstitutional statewide property tax, and we need to get rid of it. In terms of term limits, I'm a longtime advocate of term limits. I support term limits. Greg Abbott opposes. Comes from the recent merger of American and U.S. Airways. I support that. That's jobs for Texas. Coming here to Texas, Greg Abbott has filed a lawsuit with Eric Holder to break that merger up. That will lose jobs for Texas. That's not a free market approach. It's government interventionism. I oppose that. And on border security, I've said I'm against the Schumer-McCain bill. No deal is better than a bad deal, and I will oppose any deal. Our opponent, Greg Abbott, has said immigration reform must pass now. No deal is better than a bad deal. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask for your consideration and your support. I've been a proven conservative for more than 3 decades. It's time we took our country back. Texas has to lead the way. We've got to go back to a grassroots-driven, policy-driven, conservative movement. Let's put a team back together. I need your help. I ask you to go to tompaukenfortexas.com. Those who don't know me, hopefully you'll learn more. I ask for your support. Government needs to be the servant of the people, not its master. We've had too much top-down, insider, big money control of our party in the post-Reagan period. We've got to take it back. With your help, we can do it in 2014. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. My name is Glenn Hegar, State Senator Glenn Hegar, and I'm running for Texas Comptroller. And my question to you, who in this room believes in your constitutional rights? Who in this room believes in liberty? Who believes in freedom? Who believes in the pursuit of happiness? We all believe in our constitutional rights. And the question is what stands between Texas being like the Far East? And when I say the Far East, I'm not talking about Asia. I'm talking about Washington, D.C. sometimes. The question is what stands behind Texas being the bastion of liberty, life, freedom? What happened? The people standing between is every single one of you in this room. And I want to say thank you for standing up what we know is right, which is our constitutional rights. As someone who has championed Second Amendment rights for the last several sessions in Texas, we are the last stronghold. In the back of the room tonight, I ask that you go bid on an auction item that I've provided, a shotgun. To me, what better else than Texas represents having an auction of a shotgun? As I unfortunately had to drive back to Austin today, the question was, what is the crime statistics of the last weekend of where? Obama's homeland, Chicago. And as the gentleman got off, he said, thank God they have gun control. Well, let me tell you what, we're going to make sure Obamaism, that type of so-called liberty, never comes to Texas.
Right.
And I want to say thank you for any of you in this room that helped us while we were going through this last legislative session of helping me, my colleagues, making sure that we passed House Bill 2 to protect life in this state. I want to say thank you for every single one of you. People say, Glenn Hegar, you sit up there for hours debating that bill. Well, let me tell you what. I had the strength and courage in part. You know why? Because of your prayers. It was a team effort. And if you don't know the power of prayer, you have never lived through it. So thank you for your prayers. Thank you for what you do. God bless you and God bless you.
I just dropped my 18-year-old daughter off at Baylor University to start her freshman year, so I'm glad to be here with you today. You all know, I'm running for Attorney General. You all know we've got a problem. It's called the federal government. You're going to hear more about it tonight. But we need to deal with the federal government now. And the reason we need to deal with it now, think about what's happening. If we lose Texas, if it goes Democrat, we can't win the White House, we can't win Congress. And that's why you see Eric Holder in our state trying to stop voter ID, trying to affect redistricting. That's the reason they're here. They want to shut us down and they want to turn Texas Democrat. If we lose Texas, we lose the nation. And we need an AG that's going to stand up and continue that 10th Amendment fight. Now, I want you to look, when you're thinking about who to vote for AG, I want you to think about record. I've been in the Texas legislature now for 12 years, both the House and the Senate. I have one of the most conservative records in the Texas legislature over the last 12 years. And that's why Texas Eagle Forum ranked me 100%, the top senator in the state Senate. Texans for Fiscal Responsibility ranked me 100%, top senator in the state Senate. And Dan Patrick and I finished tied for first with Texas Conservative Coalition.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
From Kingwood TEA Party. We want to remind you and have liberty on your wall. It says, Senator Ted Cruz, the eyes and hopes of Texas are upon you. The Kingwood TEA Party. We hope that you keep liberty in your eyesight, but it's not enough when you get to Washington, because I'll tell you, they're attacking him left and right there.
Well, and I'll tell you, Robin, you're not the only one with a presentation.
Well, just a minute. Let's finish this one.
Oh. You know, it's just like Washington. They keep telling me to stay quiet.
Yes. It is.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Creighton. I'm a candidate for the Agriculture Commissioner's position in Texas, and we wanted to welcome Senator Cruz, who stands on convictions, is principled. He's a politician that does what he says when he gets to office, right? There are those in the Obama administration that would like to see him not accomplish these goals, right? So we are going to give him the DC Survival Kit, an authentic law enforcement survival kit flight jacket, and I'm going to juggle here. And so with this vest, we are going to allow Senator Cruz to continue to do what he's doing on our behalf. So for myself and the Kingwood TEA Party and conservatives across the state, let's give Senator Cruz a thank you.
That way we can have your back even when we're not there. All right.
Well, thank you, and you guys are not the only one with a presentation. I want to start with a presentation to two of my favorite people in the world, Jim and Robin, and to all of our friends here at Kingwood TEA. one of you. Y'all are awesome. You know, I remember when this group used to meet at Los Cucos. And in fact, I remember, I think the first time I came to visit with y'all, there was a New York Times reporter in the room. And actually, to her credit, she was outed and didn't get tarred feathers. But if you recall at the time, I observed that I suspected the New York Times thought it was fitting that we were meeting at a place called Los Cucos. And you know what? Since then, I've noticed there are a heck of a lot more cuckoos. You know, the men and women in this room, y'all are here for one reason, which is you love this country. And you're worried about the direction. We can't keep marching down this road because it leads off the cliff. You're worried about the spending, you're worried about the debt. You know that in nearly 300 years of our nation's history, every generation has given to the next generation greater opportunity, greater prosperity. And y'all are here because you're not prepared for us to be the first generation to give our kids and grandkids less opportunity and less prosperity. We don't have a big window to turn things around. We have a short window, but let me tell you, I am convinced we're going to do it. It is easy to be demoralized. But let me tell you, there is a change afoot, and it is a powerful, powerful change in terms of how political decision-making happens. And that change is the rise of the grassroots. That change is the power of the men and women in this room. All of y'all saw it directly in our Senate race here in Texas. So many of you put blood and sweat and tears, and you remember when we got started, back in January of 2011, I was at 2% in the polls. The margin of error was 3%. Now, I have to admit, I was real excited about our poll numbers. Until my wife, Heidi, pointed out to me that technically I could have been at -1%. And y'all remember a $50 million primary, most expensive primary in the country, being outspent 3-1. $35 million in nasty attack ads. As Heidi was watching those midway through the campaign, she turned to me. She said, "Goodness gracious, I didn't realize what a rotten guy you were." But thanks to the work of each of you, thanks to the work of men and women across this state, thousands upon thousands of Texans who knocked on doors, who got an email, got on Facebook, who said, "Enough! We can't keep doing what we've been doing because it ain't working." Thanks to y'all's efforts, we went from 2% to not just winning, but winning the primary by 14 points and winning the general by 16 points. That is a testament to what the grassroots can do. Because remember, all the political intelligentsia said this was impossible. And the great thing about us is none of us were smart enough to know it was impossible. I think it's a very good thing not to realize what's impossible. Because that's actually how you get things done. And you know what? That's also the legacy of what it means to be an American and to be a Texan. You know, when the mightiest army on earth tells its colonists, "We're going to tax you without representation," it is impossible that a bunch of ragtag colonists can defeat the mighty British Army. When the mighty General Santa Anna demands that the Texians in the city of Gonzales hand over your guns and hand over the cannon that guards the city, it is impossible the ragtag gang of Texans can stand up to that mighty army. And the idea that we don't just stand up, but we make a flag with a picture of the candidate and say, come and take it. We are a people who routinely do the impossible. And that change, the rise of the grassroots, is what gives me so much optimism. If you look right now at the fights we're fighting in the U.S. Senate, one of the first big fights I was involved in was standing side by side with my friend Rand Paul in a 13-hour filibuster against And during that filibuster, we saw the same pattern. The American people got engaged, began going on Facebook, going on Twitter, speaking out, and as a result of your action, we saw President Obama forced to do what he had refused to do for 3 consecutive weeks, which is admit in writing the U.S. Constitution limits his ability to target U.S. citizens. We saw in the guns debate, after the tragic shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, President Obama didn't come out and say we need to go after violent criminals, and I think we should come down on violent criminals like a ton of bricks. But instead, he used it as an excuse to try to go after the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. And again, we saw in that fight a handful of leaders stood up and fought and said, we will do anything. We will filibuster any legislation that undermines the constitutional right to keep and bear arms. Now, conventional wisdom in Washington was that fight could not be won. That the momentum was all with the Democrats. In fact, Vice President Joe Biden and the great thing is you don't need a punch. You just say his name, people laugh. But Vice President Joe Biden observed, he said, listen, if your house is ever being attacked, just go outside with a double-barreled shotgun and fire both barrels in the air. Which is very, very good advice. If it so happens you're being attacked by a flock of geese. But Biden and President Obama and the Senate Democrats were convinced that all the momentum was with them. And what we saw during the fight was just like Trump. We saw millions of Americans begin standing up, begin calling their senators, begin going on Facebook, going on Twitter, going on email, saying, stop going along to get along, stand up and fight to defend the Constitution, defend our liberty. And as a result of your engagement, when those votes came to a vote, every single proposal of Barack Obama's to undermine the Second Amendment was voted down on the floor of the U.S. That new pattern, that new paradigm, that you win fights through energizing, through mobilizing the grassroots, scares the living daylights out of Washington. Because let me tell you what I think is the most significant divide right now. It's not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between the entrenched politicians of both parties. And the American people. And how do we turn our country around? How do we pull back from the brink? The American people rise up and say enough is enough, and we hold our elected officials accountable. And I want to talk to you very briefly about two fights that I think are incredibly important right now. Number one, we've all seen the abuses of the IRS. Yes. Now, the fact that the IRS asked one group, tell us the books you're reading, prepare book reports. Asked another group, tell us the content of your prayers. Let me tell you, the federal government has no business knowing the content of any American.
Here, here.
When Richard Nixon tried to use the IRS to target his political enemies, it was wrong. And it was rightly condemned across the political spectrum. And when the Obama administration did the same thing, it was every bit as wrong.
Yeah.
But there's an even broader problem. When that much power is drawn into Washington, it's fundamentally dangerous. It doesn't matter who's in power. And that's why I think the simplest and best solution is we need to abolish the IRS. Now listen, if ordinary Washington rules apply, that's impossible. There are an army of lobbyists on K Street that make hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying for exemptions in the tax code. You know, there are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible. Not a one of them is as good. If ordinary Washington rules apply, you can't get Democrats to do that. You can't get Republicans to do that. The only way we can abolish the IRS is if the American people rise up. And the second fight that's going on that I right now think is the single biggest fight facing Congress and the country right now. Between now and September 30th, we need to stand up and defund Obama. Now, I got to tell you, that statement has been publicly described as stupid, dishonest, deceitful, crazy, and that's just by the Republicans. And I'm not making that up. That really is what they said. If ordinary Washington rules apply, this cannot be done. But I think now is the single best time to defeat Obama. There is bipartisan agreement this thing isn't working. The lead author of Obamacare, Senate Democrat Max Baucus, publicly described it as a huge train wreck. That's the guy who wrote it. He didn't read it. I like that so much, I'm going to pay the highest compliment I can give, which is I'm going to steal it. Maybe I've been in Washington too long. Look, even the unions are jumping ship.
The IRS.
The president of the Teamsters, James Hoffman, said Obamacare will destroy the 40-hour work week that is the backbone of the American middle class.
So why not let it collapse? What is done instead of being called,
Okay, let's actually answer that question because it's a good question. Why not let it collapse on its own? Because it's not working. And the reason is, what is the Obama strategy? That's the end goal. That is absolutely the end goal. The Obama strategy, I believe, is on January 1, subsidies. And his strategy is very simple. He knows that in modern times, no major entitlement has ever gone into effect and then been unwound. Never been done. His strategy is to get as many Americans as possible hooked on the subsidies, addicted to the sugar. And I'll point out, he unilaterally and lawlessly waived the eligibility requirement. So they don't ask. They're encouraging liar loans. They're encouraging fraud. If you say you qualify for a subsidy, that's good enough for them. That's their strategy, is get to January 1. I think if we're going to stop Obamacare, we have to do it now. And for everyone who argues and says, well, taking the stand on defunding is risky, it's scary, we don't like doing risky things. I'll tell you the question I've asked over and over again is, okay, what is your alternative? If I'm right that if we get to January 1, this thing is here forever, then give me an alternative that has any realistic prospect. And I've yet to get a good answer.
But is not the only way to shut the government down on September 1st or October 1st, whatever?
September 30th, but let me walk through how it would
Is that not the only
operate.
way to defund it?
Well, let me walk through how it would operate, because it's a little different. The question was, is the only way to do it to shut the government down? Here's what I think should happen. The House of Representatives should pass a continuing resolution that funds the entire federal government, every bit of it, except Obama. And that explicitly prohibits spending any federal government money, either mandatory or discretionary, on Obama. And I've filed legislation to do exactly that. Now, the next step, we know how this plays out. President Obama and Harry Reid will scream and yell. The mean, nasty Republicans are threatening to shut down.
Good.
And at that point, we got to do something Republicans haven't done in a long time. We
And
got to stand up and win the arguments. We got to stand up and say, no, we have voted to fund the government. We want to keep the government running. Why is Barack Obama threatening to shut down the federal government? You know, President Obama just unilaterally and lawlessly granted waivers from the burdens of Obamacare for every big corporation in the country. Why is Barack Obama willing to shut down the federal government to deny hardworking American families those same waivers?
That's right.
You know, the question that was just called out, how about Congress? You want to talk about the divide between entrenched politicians and the American people. Barack Obama just sat down, met with Harry Reid and the Democratic senators, and those Democratic senators effectively, according to the published reports, begged Barack Obama, let us out of Obamacare. These are the guys that passed it. And Barack Obama just said, to heck with the law, we're exempting members of Congress.
And their staff.
And their staff.
Yes.
Look, not only that, the IRS Employees Union is asking to be exempted from Obamacare. These are the guys in charge of enforcing it. And they're saying, we don't want to be under this thing. So how do we win? We pass the continuing resolution, we stand up and we say, we will fund the federal government, but not Obamacare, because it isn't working, it's hurting American people, it's killing jobs, it is driving up the cost of health insurance, it's causing people to lose their health insurance, and the people that are being hurt the most are the most vulnerable. They're young people, Hispanics, African Americans, single moms. They're the ones getting their hours forcibly reduced to 29 hours a week. We got to go and win that argument. So the question is, how do you get Boehner to sell it? Was the question that was just asked. Listen, if the path to getting this done depends upon convincing people in smoke-filled rooms in Washington, it can't be done. It's impossible. I'm going to make a confession to you. I cannot do this. Mike Lee cannot do this. No elected official in Washington can do this. Only you can get this done. The only way this happens is if we break out of traditional Washington rules. The only way this happens is if we see an army, a grassroots army of Americans demanding that their elected officials do the right thing. There's a national website. It's been launched by Senate conservatives folks. That is www.don'tfundit.com. Don'tfundit.com. I would ask every one of you, go to don'tfundit.com. Sign the national petition. In just a couple of weeks, we've got over 375,000 signatures on that national petition. But number two, pick up the phone, call your senators, call your elected reps, and say, stand up and do the right thing. And then get 10, 20, 30, 50 of your friends to do the same. If we see between now and September 30th, millions of Americans rising up and saying this is a train wreck, and American people, American families deserve the same waiver, the same treatment that giant corporations and members of Congress get. That's how we win. Listen, what I'm here for is two things. One, to say thank you. And two, to say I need your help. We are in the middle of, I think, the biggest and most important fight this Congress will ever face. And the only way we win is to do exactly what we did in the Texas Senate race, do exactly what we did with drones, exactly what we did with guns. We got to do it again on a bigger scale, on a national scale.
Articles of impeachment.
We got to make people more scared of doing the wrong thing than they are doing the right thing. And that's something only y'all can do. All right, with that, I'm going to open up the questions.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you all for the very warm welcome. And how about that Ted Cruz? I've made some big decisions during my tenure as Attorney General, but looking back, probably the best decision I ever made was hiring Ted Cruz to be my Solicitor General. Great. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Robin said I should be live, but the first thing I was thinking of was, God, I know there have been some dead voters up here in the Kingwood area, and maybe something we need to crack down on. But I got to tell you, I appreciate Robin. Robin had me out to the Kingwood TEA Party last February. And she asked me a question at the very end. She said, Greg, I'm going to ask you to give me a promise. Will you come back and talk to us again after you announce that you're running for governor of the state of Texas? And I said, yes, count it as a promise. I will be here. I'm fulfilling my promise, Robin. Now, I called Jim yesterday, and I asked Jim to narrow down what he wanted me to focus on in visiting with you about. And he said, we'll talk about some of the challenges I've waged against the Obama administration, talk about my fights to defend the United States Constitution, and also talk about some of the things that I'm going to be doing for the state of Texas. And I said, well, that's great. But then I got to thinking about a haunting story that I experienced years ago. What happened is that before I was Attorney General, I served on the Texas Supreme Court. And one day, I was going and speaking to a large legal seminar about the size of this room. And I was the next speaker. And I pulled up along one of the lawyers in the back of the room, and I asked him, how are things going, so I could kind of get a feel for the crowd. He said, well, things are going pretty good so far, but our next speaker is one of those long-winded judges, and you know how that goes. I said, well, do you have any idea who I am? He said, no, I have no idea. I said, well, my name is Greg Abbott, and I'm the next speaker. where you could tell he was embarrassed, but you could tell he was a quick-witted lawyer because he looked back at me and said, well, do you have any idea who I am? I said, I have no idea. He said, great, I'm out of here. I do not want you to be out of here before I get through talking or before some of the other great elected officials will have a chance to visit with you. So let me just tell you about a few things. First, let me go back to my friend Ted Cruz. Ted is someone that I engaged in battle with day in, day out during his 5.5 years as my first Solicitor General. When he was on my staff, he went up to Washington, D.C., was arguing a big case before the United States Supreme Court. He had arrayed against him all the powers and forces of the World Court, the Bush administration, the United Nations. And I knew that as he was holed up in his hotel room, he needed some encouragement. A reminder that in this case, we were fighting for Texas sovereignty itself. And he could not let up, he could not give up, he had to keep fighting. So I sent him something to hang in his hotel room as he prepared for those oral arguments. And it was an exact replica of that come and take it flag that he held up earlier tonight. Well, the fights that Ted and I waged were a forerunning of the battles to come. We're seeing our liberty increasingly threatened in this country, even by our own federal government. We're seeing a dramatic and dangerous expansion of government that is running too much of your lives and taking way too much of your money.
Yes.
We're running up a debt, and we have no strategy to solve that debt. And we have a federal government that has deceived the American people into thinking that our border is secure, when in reality it is not. Well, I've been fighting these battles. As you know, I have now sued Barack Obama and his administration 28 times. I did not invent that phrase, don't mess with Texas, but I have applied it more than anybody else. Robin, I'm glad that you all are, lost Robin, I'm glad that you all are recognizing the Constitution. Because I know the Constitution. I've defended the Constitution. And let me tell you, the Second Amendment and 10th Amendment are not suggestions. They are guaranteed rights that I have fought for in court to defend for you and all Americans. The 10th Amendment was part of that lawsuit that I filed challenging Obamacare. You know, it's disgusting what's happened with Obamacare. We knew when we filed that lawsuit the very day the president signed that law. We knew that law was unconstitutional. But also we knew at that time that economic havoc Obamacare was going to be wrecking on this country. We knew the false promises the president made when he said, if you like your doctor, you're going to get to keep your doctor. The false promise that Obamacare will drive down the cost of health care or increase access to health care when already we're seeing health care providers pull back on access to health care. But it gets bad when the president adds injury to insult. When he says, as Senator Cruz pointed out, they're going to exempt members of Congress and their employees from having to follow Obamacare because it's just too hard on them.
And we have to pay 75%.
Well, if the employees of Congress should be exempt from Obamacare, then employees in Texas should be exempt from Obamacare. That's why we need Senator Cruz to continue to use every tool in his toolbox to dismantle Obamacare, and that's exactly why the state of Texas is going to continue our fight against Obamacare. Now, I've also defended your Second Amendment rights. We were involved in 2 cases that went to the United States Supreme Court. Our opponents argued the Second Amendment just protected the right to bear arms for militias, not individual rights.
No way.
We said exactly no way. The Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to keep and bear arms, and we won both times. More recently, we've been working with State Representative Steve Todd and the team he put together. He was the mastermind behind the Texas Firearms Protection Act that seeks to nullify any federal law that interferes with our Second Amendment rights. Steve Todd proves that if you want to start a fight with the Texans, just try taking away their freedom. Well, let me tell you, this fight is going to escalate maybe this month. Because you remember a couple of months ago when the United Nations passed that UN arms trade treaty, and now I hear Barack Obama may be signing that treaty later on this month.
The Senate has to ratify that.
You know, it's bad enough when the federal government tries to take your guns away. But I tell you, we are not going to take it when the federal government authorizes the United Nations to take your guns away. And when the president signs this, and if it is ratified by the United States Senate, then my 29th lawsuit is going to be against Barack Obama and the United Nations. Because treaties do not trump constitutional rights. I want you to know I've also been involved in defending First Amendment rights to ensure that we prevent the unraveling of the moral character of this country. You all know that I used the First Amendment to successfully defend the Ten Commandments monument that stands on the Texas Capitol grounds. And I used the First Amendment to successfully defend the words "one nation under God" and the United States Pledge of Allegiance. But also at a time when you see too many high school kids being involved in teenage pregnancy, being involved in drugs, being involved in crime, don't you think it's nice when you see a group of teenagers in high school decide that they are going to refer to God instead of drugs? That is exactly what we saw the Coots cheerleaders do when they displayed gospel verses on the football field. Well, when it comes to our freedom and when it comes to our future, I want you to know I will never stop fighting, and that is exactly why I'm running to be your next governor for the great state of Texas. Let me tell you real quick, 3 things I want to focus on as your governor. 1, I want to renew the principles and values that have made America great. The Constitution, liberty, and morality. I will continue to fight back against the overreaching federal government. As your governor, I will reject the Obamacare mandated Medicaid expansion in the state of Texas. As your governor, I will push back against the job-killing regulations the EPA seeks to impose on the state of Texas. Veto any law that seeks to restrict your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. The second thing I will do as governor is to continue the things that have made Texas the #1 job creator in this nation. That means low government, low taxes, reasonable regulations, and the right to work laws that have prevented Texas from the union abuses that we see in so many other states. But we can do so much more to ignite the Texas economy. One thing that we can do to keep our economy the #1 economy in the nation is to level the playing field by getting government out of the business of picking between winners and losers, and by reducing taxes on employers.
Yeah.
Another thing that we must do is rein in our debt and reduce the amount the state can borrow. You have to live by a tight budget, so must the state of Texas. The third thing that I will do is to look forward for the next 10 years and keep Texas on the right track to remain #1 in this nation by addressing needs that we have. Needs like water,
Yes.
roads,
Yes.
and schools.
Yes.
Yes.
But importantly, we can address these needs without raising taxes. What we must do is prioritize the needs, address them first in the budget, to make the remainder of the budget fit within the means that we have by setting strict limits on spending in Austin, Texas. We must usher in a new era of education reform for our kids. We have a 19th century based education system with 21st century kids. We ought to have a 21st century economy. Now is time for a 21st century education plan. To do that, we need to unleash our educators by stopping them from having to teach so much to the test and allow students to reach for their very best. I will drive a stake through the heart of Cisco. Dan Patrick and I fought that fight during this past legislative session, and we thought we had it under control. Now, we still have ongoing state-based investigations looking at financing involving Cisco, but as your governor, I will ensure Cisco is going to be a part of history, not a part of the future in the state of Texas. And as your governor, I will continue to ensure that Common Core will not be allowed in the state of Texas. And as your governor, I will do what the federal government has failed to do. I am going to secure our border. Our priorities are wrong in this state. When we stop a valedictorian from mentioning God in a graduation speech, but we cannot stop drug cartels from crossing our border on a daily basis, we will right that right away when I'm your governor. saying this. It's clear that we all agree on one principle, and that is America is great, not because of government. America is great because of freedom. And when you think about it, there is an arc to the story of America, and that arc bends toward freedom. From Valley Forge to Vicksburg, from the Civil War to civil rights, from the Cold War to the War on Terror, Americans have always remembered that freedom is worth fighting for. That is what you all are doing. There is a liberal agenda in this country that's trying to strip away the freedom that has made America great. And what we need are not people who are going to talk about it, not people who are going to think about it. We need warriors who are going to stand up and do something about it to defend our freedom in this country. We need patriots who will stand for freedom against the strongest forces. You are those patriots. You are vital to restoring freedom for the future of this country. So I ask you to join me in this fight for freedom in Texas and freedom in America. And join me in fighting for the greatest people to ever inhabit this earth, the people of Texas. Thank you so much.
This is not the courthouse, so you don't need to stand. It's great to be back in Texas, be around friendlies, be around Texans, who I think are really the best folks on earth are from the state of Texas. I know there's a lot of things going on in the back of the room. People are bidding them up, bidding them up, bidding them up. That's good. But I want to take a few minutes and talk about something that we don't talk too much about in schools, and that's history. History is the great teacher, and history is what it is. Even though people from time to time try to change what happened in history, the facts remain the facts, whatever they are. And I want to take you back about 167 years ago. And this place that we are in now was an area of unsettlement in the United States. This was not part of the United States. As you all know, Texas was a part of Spain for a long time, part of Mexico for a little while, part of France, believe it or not, for a while. And here's what happened in what we now call Texas. Texas was a part of the Republic of Mexico. The Republic of Mexico broke away from Spain, became its own nation. Texas was a state in that nation. They elected a president, and that president turned the democracy into making him dictator. You know, that has happened before in history. And Santa Anna turned Mexico into a dictatorship, and you know what happened? There was revolution in all of Mexico. And Texas was one of several Mexican states that revolted against that dictatorship. When you learn Texas history, you only learn about Texas. You don't learn about the other revolutions that failed in Mexico. And how it started was this. There was a group of folks. They say they were obstinate people. Well, Texans are obstinate. And they had a little bitty cannon in Gonzales, Texas, that was given to them to protect them from the outlaws and other doodads. The Mexican government decided, you know, we really don't want those citizens of Mexico to have that cannon. So they assembled a group of Mexican soldiers and they marched over to Gonzales and they said, give us that gun. And Texans, being who they are, hoisted a flag. And it said, come and take it. Now, just so you know where I stand on that issue, I have a pair of boots on that has the come and take it flag in the front of those boots. Shots were exchanged between the Mexican army and the Texas settlers. Everybody was a bad shot. Few people got wounded, but basically nobody was hurt. The thing was over with. But that started the Texas War of Independence against Mexico when government tried to seize liberty away from the citizens. And in that case, it was guns. Interesting enough, years before, those people's ancestors who lived in Massachusetts had a confrontation with the British, and the British tried to take their guns at Lexington and Concord, and that started the American Revolution. Both revolutions were successful. But let me tell you this about history. We just know that it was successful. Texas became an independent country. We were a country for 9 years. Some people say we're still a country. I'm one of those. But liberty, to fight for liberty was hard. The Texas Revolution started in October of 1835. Texas won a few skirmishes, even seized San Antonio de Bear. And then we started losing. We lost at a place called the Alamo, where 187 people of all races, all volunteers, came to Texas for various reasons, but they stood their ground and they all were killed in the name of liberty. Then a few days later, at a place called Goliad, Colonel Fannin surrendered his Texas troops and they were all murdered. And battle after battle was lost. Texans started fleeing back to the United States as fast as they could go. It looked hopeless, folks. They thought it was hopeless. They abandoned their land, their property, and they were scared. Of course, they were led by Sam Houston. Santa Anna's chasing him. And remember, Santa Anna hadn't lost a battle yet. Not in Mexico, not in Texas. He had lost no battles. But then he met his day of reckoning at a place called San Jacinto. Another group of Texans from all states, many foreign countries, all volunteers. They stood their ground. They took on a larger army than themselves, and they were successful. They defeated Santa Anna on the plains of San Jacinto. We built a monument out there that looks like the Washington Monument. Of course, it's taller. Just like the Texas Capitol, it's taller than the U.S. Capitol. That's a fact. And Texas became a free country. It started because of government intrusion into the personal liberties of individuals. But folks, it was hard. People died fighting for that word freedom. The American Revolution took 8 years. It was hard. Liberty is always hard to keep. And I tell you history. I tell you that story of history because we are making history. You are making history. And we live in difficult times. And we seem to be in a time when I believe government is oppressing liberties of American citizens. We have an agency. I'll just mention one because they're not going to let me talk all night. The National Spy Agency, NSA. The idea that our government would let government intrude into the privacy of American citizens in the name of security is awful. And it ought to upset everybody in Congress, regardless of party affiliation, because you see, the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution says that we, the people, have the right to be secure in our homes, in our effects, and a warrant cannot be issued except on probable cause, and you got to name the place to be searched and what you're searching for. And you got to have a judge sign off on that warrant. Because you see, history, they didn't do that before. The British, they just come in your home. They got general warrants, which, what does that mean? That means if they're looking for somebody that doesn't agree with the king, They'd search every house in the neighborhood. National Surveillance Agency. They want to search everybody's phone records to hope they can find one bad guy, or two, or three, or four. You can't do that. It violates the letter of the law of the Fourth Amendment. It violates the spirit of the Fourth Amendment. And that better upset Americans, and including people in the United States House of Representatives, to rein in government oppression of the people. And that's the fight we're in, among many others. And I want to tell you, don't give up. Don't grow weary in doing good. Some things are worth fighting for. There really are some things to fight for. Whether it's in wartime of war, we've done that. But now we're in a political fight. And our weapons are the First Amendment. The freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble, the freedom of religion, the freedom of press. We fight with the First Amendment. And we make sure government doesn't infringe on the Fourth Amendment. And certainly not the Second Amendment either. So, here we are, it's hot in here. You know, we're in Texas. I tell my friends in Washington there are two seasons in Houston, summer and August. We are in August. But you know, it's hot overseas too. And whether people know it or not, we are still in Afghanistan. America's finest are still at war, trying to protect our liberties. And we're not going to let the federal government back home start spying on American citizens and become another Soviet-style police state, all in the name of what they say is security. So I commend you for what you're doing. Fight for our country. Fight for it. Don't give up. Don't grow weary. There are a lot of battles that we have to fight in, and we have to win those battles. So I thank you for being engaged. And those people, our ancestors, whether it's in Texas or whether it was in Lexington and Concord, they were just regular folks. They were shopkeepers. Some of them were even lawyers. You know, working folks. They were young. Primarily, a lot of them were young, but they were all willing to do whatever they needed to do to fight for liberty. And so you're just like them, and you're obstinate, just like they are, and that's a good thing. So I encourage you. I want to thank you for what you do. It makes a difference. America is better because of the fact that you believe in it. Texas is better because you fight for it. And do not grow weary in doing good. And that's just the way it is. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Robert. Let me quickly explain. If I look a little redder than I normally do, it's because I'm Republican and because yesterday was my birthday, and so I went water skiing with our 9-year-old. And my wife said at the end of the day, David, aren't you smart enough to put more suntan lotion on? I said, yeah, but it wouldn't have made any difference because I was falling so much. So this election in 2014 for Lieutenant Governor is coming at a time in which it's a turning point for Texas and for America. Literally, as we're talking, Washington, President Obama is trying to find 250 regional coordinators right here for Texas. He's going to spend $10 million this year trying to, just itching to reduce Texas by pay. On the other hand, you take a look at our state of Texas. We're leading the nation economically, and we're the standard for good conservative leadership. Now, a number of years ago, you all made a decision on conservative leadership. You hired me to be Lieutenant Governor and to help lead this state. And you hired me, I believe, to make sure that we kept our taxes low. And so over the last 10 years, I've cut taxes over 50 times for over $16 billion. $1.6 billion this year. $1.3 billion this year. You hired me to make sure that our spending stayed low. And we've been involved. I've cut taxes, I've cut spending by billions of dollars. That's why Texas remains 48th out of 50 states in per capita state taxes. I'm trying to limit my comments to 5 minutes, so I have a couple of notes here. You hired me to reduce the number of frivolous lawsuits in the state because they were hurting business and hurting job creation. And I've passed one important tort reform bill after another. You hired me to have create the lightest regulatory hand that we could in the state because overregulation kills jobs. As a result, our Texas employers have created more net new jobs over the last 3 years than the rest of the country combined. That's amazing, just amazing. You hired me to stand tall for traditional Texas values. And I've stood tall, I've stood rigid against the national Democrats and against paid protesters that were whipped into a frenzy by the International Socialist Movement and by the Occupy Wall Street. And we passed the biggest, most important pro-life bill in the country this year twice. You hired me to help improve our public education because I think it's a key to the door for opportunity for young people. I'm a product of our public schools right here in the Houston area. And as a result, because we want to make sure our children have lots of opportunity, we want to make sure our workforce is well trained. And that's why this year we ended teaching to the test and we reduced by 2/3 the number of final exams. So we're not spending as much time teaching to the test. I'm a small government conservative who believes that the free market should be the answer. I'm a lifelong conservative businessman. Lifelong. I still operate my business. When you pay $600 a month, it's good to have your own business. You know, Texas is the clear economic and moral leader in the country. And you look at Washington, as Ted was talking about, it's a mess. It's broken. It's dysfunctional. And the implementation of Obamacare will threaten the bankruptcy of every single state, including Texas, and it will hurt our health care system. It's a disaster. But right now, Team Obama is determined to hold on to power. And they're going to do anything they can to try and hurt conservative states like Texas. And we're seeing that vengeance in the way they're treating Texas. Just go back and think about Benghazi. Think about Cairo. Think about what they're doing with the Egyptian military right now. This man needs to be impeached. As a former officer of the United States Air Force, as a former CIA officer abroad, this man needs to be impeached. He's hurting the national sovereignty of our country. Not only that, but Barack Obama has turned the federal government into his own political machine. You know, Battleground Texas is talking big, but I'm sure you feel the same way that I do. Texas is going to turn blue over my dead cold political body. So we're standing here today as dedicated, strong conservatives at a crossroads. Are we going to let the Democrats take over the state of Texas? No. I'm running for re-election to have the chance to keep fighting for you against Washington's leftist policies and help protect your freedoms and your prosperity. I'm running for re-election to keep passing good conservative legislation to make Texas even stronger. And I'm running for re-election to help secure our borders once and for all. Against illegal immigration, against dangerous drug traffickers, and against people that could be terrorists and want to come into Texas. That's the reason why I've helped appropriate almost $800 million of your money over the last 6 years to provide more Texas muscle for the border, to try and secure that border, because literally, I've been on the ground, I've seen it, and it worries me if we don't. I'm running for re-election to make sure that we've got enough water, highways, and electricity for a population that's going to double over the next 50 years, and we do it with free market, private solutions. And I'm running for re-election. I'm running for re-election because I want to make sure that Texas has opportunity as big as the state for generations to come. So I'm asking you to support me, vote for me, rehire me, and together we're going to keep the Texas miracle alive for generations to come, for our children and their children's children. Thank you so much.
It's great to be with you tonight. Are you having fun talking about our nation and our state? I'll tell you what, it's worth fighting for. They say when you are in a long line of speakers, you either need to be first or you need to be last. Never be second, because they don't remember what you say. So it's my job tonight to make sure you remember what I said when I'm up here. And I want to tell you that when I think about this race for our next lieutenant governor, I know that this race is not just about the next election. It's about the next generation. It's about fighting for our values, standing up for what we believe in, and that's why we're all here tonight, to bring together and stand up for the values that we believe in. You know, the media tries to define us, don't they? They like to put us in categories, but I think the media just doesn't understand us, because it is our values that define us. Our values that says that we're one nation under God, and we don't need to apologize for that. We have a value system that really believes in less government and lower spending, less borrowing, because we know that leads to more opportunity, more freedoms, and more liberty. When we talk about downsizing government, the media likes to say it's because we don't care about people. Folks, the reason that we want to downsize government and limit spending is because we want to empower people to be for themselves what government can never do. Now, when I think about this race to be our next lieutenant governor is really about leadership. That's what it's about. A leader who will fight for those values, who will stand up for us and get the job done. When I think about leadership, leadership is not turning a national hero out of the most liberal state senator that we have in Texas. To me, that's not leadership. Leadership to me is not being satisfied with rankings of how we did, because I'm proud of the rankings that I got in both a member of the House and a member of the Senate. I'm proud that I've been called a fighter for free enterprise and a champion for small business, but ranking is not leadership. Leadership is doing and delivering on the issues that are important to the people of Texas. That's what leadership is. That's why I fought for tax cuts in both the House and the Senate, and I cut government spending in my own agency to give money back to the taxpayers. That's what we're supposed to do. You know that something is wrong with our country when we have an IRS that targets the Tea Party, and we have an NSA that taps our phone conversations, but we have a federal government that will not secure our border. That's why I work for savings in my agency to buy cameras to go on that border to secure the sovereignty of the United States of America. That's what conservatives are supposed to do. Deliver on the issues that are important. That's why I fought for the rights of private property owners, because I want to end eminent domain abuse. The right to own and use private property is the cornerstone of our economy. and we must never forget that. And that's what I want to do as your next Lieutenant Governor. When the Obama administration turned its back on landowners, I stood up for landowners who are being chased off their property by violent drug cartels and those that are engaged in human trafficking. And I developed a 6-point plan to reform our failed immigration system that does not include amnesty and starts with securing our border, because that's what conservatives are supposed to do. You know, I know that elections are about choices. And I know we can all get up here tonight and have a pretty good tale to spin. But you need to look at us and where we've been and what we've been doing. And I'm excited to be here with you tonight because you are keeping government accountable. You are the ones that are making certain that when it comes to our national party, who spent $10 million on how to reinvent Republicans, folks, we don't need to redefine ourselves. We need to rededicate ourselves to the best principles that built the best economy this world's ever seen. That's what we need to do. And you're the ones that get to make those choices. And elections are about choices, about who you want on the battlefield fighting for you, who you want carrying that banner. And that's why I'm here tonight, to say thank you for standing up for our great nation. Thank you for standing up for our state, because I know that Texas of tomorrow is bright because of who you are and what you stand for. My website is toddstaples.com. I'd appreciate you taking a look. Thanks a lot for letting me be here tonight.
Fantastic night. Thank you for staying late. I see a lot of friends here. I'll tell you a quick story. We only have 5 minutes. I'll be very quick. I'm pumping gas at HEB about 3 weeks ago. You heard me tell the story on the radio. It's true. A lady drive by, winds her window down, stopped. She said, "Are you Dan Patrick?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Will you get over here right now? I am angry with you." And I thought, well, we're still in special session. I'm not. Is she angry because I passed the sonogram bill? Is she angry because I cut business taxes?
We would like to
businesses
share
$1 million or less? Is she angry
Please do.
because I put in
Seriously.
trust in the Senate?
Tell me
Is she
on that.
angry because
How
I
the
put
government's
in the pledge? Is she angry because I passed those education bills? What is she angry
We got
about?
one appointment
So
this
I
week.
walked over, I'm obedient,
next
I walked
week,
over and said,
open.
"Yes, ma'am." She said, "I've been
Sometime
angry
midweek
with you
or
for
something.
35 years."
And Austin.
I said, "What did I do?" She said, "You said something bad about Tony Dorsett when you were a sportscaster, and I still haven't forgiven you." I felt better. Let me tell you why I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. Why me? Why now? Someone said, "Well, why are you running against these other people?" I said, "I'm not running against them. I'm running for me. I'm running for my conservative vision. A conservative vision. This session, I'm very proud. They ranked me the most conservative senator of the 19th of the Texas Conservative Coalition. I'm proud of that. And since 2007, I'm ranked as the most conservative senator, and it does mean something. It means you keep your word. That's what I campaigned on. It means you're consistent. It means you don't wake up in the morning figuring out what you stand for. When I wake up in the morning, I know I'm going to vote that day on an issue. I know, because it's either going to be with our principles and values or against. And if it's against, it's a no vote. You heard, and everyone in the race, good guy, okay? They're all credible people. But we need someone with the impeccable social conservative record and impeccable fiscal conservative record to be the next lieutenant governor for multiple reasons. We have a very short window, folks, of Republicans being in power. I don't know if we're going to be here a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. But it's not always going to be us owning all the positions. And the more we go to the middle, the more we become moderate, the faster we will be out of office because some of you will stop coming to vote. We have the most conservative voters in America, and we have not had the most conservative leadership in Austin. We've done a lot of good things, and I'm proud as a Republican of the things we've done. But I'm running for the things we haven't done. We have not made a full commitment to secure the border. We have not reduced your property taxes in a meaningful way. And you should not pay off your house in Texas and have to rent it for the rest of your life from the state of Texas. Amen. So you own your property. So let me tell you something. Talk is cheap. These issues that you want to pass, strong border security, sanctuary city, property tax reform, they have been on the back burner in Austin for a decade. I filed every one of those bills in the special session. All they had to do was call them up. We had our chance. They weren't called, and there was no help to call them on. School choice. You all know about the 21 vote rule. You need 21 votes to bring a bill to the floor. There are only 19 Republicans, so we always need 2 Democrats. In the special session, we don't use 21 votes. So we could have brought every bill that we wanted to pass in a decade on the floor in the special session and passed it, and we didn't. And in terms of the mob rule, we need a lieutenant governor who would have never allowed that to happen in the first place, who has the vision to say, this is not going to happen on my watch. We have 3 chances to stop it. Then we had the chance multiple times not to allow the senator from Fort Worth, Wendy Davis, to become a rock star in her party. And all that's going to do, she's going to lose. She's not going to win her statewide election, but she could cost us some down ballot tickets because she's going to drive some turnout. She's going to use that to throw rocks against conservatives and Tea Party people and pro-life people. And it should have never happened. Should have never happened. We've given them a leg up in a state that we can't lose. We have to understand that if we lose Texas to Democrats, we will never elect a Republican to the White House again. The electoral votes of New York, California, and Texas make it virtually mathematically impossible to get 270 electoral votes. So there will not be a Republican president again if the Democrats win Texas. And that's why we have a target on our back. And that's why we need strong conservative leadership. And let me tell you something else as I close. This will be a lieutenant governor who will not appoint 6 out of 12 Democrats to be chairman of committees. All right? I mean, how does that work? 50% of the Democrats in the Senate are chairman of committees? Chairman, I was chairman of education this session. I was proud of the appointment. I felt like I did a really good job taking on C-scope, reducing STAR tests, creating flexibility in our 4x4 system, focusing on career. With Dan Huberty, we passed a bill to keep Common Core out of Texas. We passed a lot of good things. Chairmen are powerful. A bill doesn't come to the committee or get passed out unless the chairman is for it. What do you think happened on those 6 committees of Democrats? And the other thing I'm going to do is this 21 vote rule. I've been talking about this for years. We only have 19 Republicans. I think Wendy is running for a higher office, so we'll win that seat. We'll have 20. That means we always need 1 Democrat, and they've abused that. They will not abuse the 21 vote rule if I'm lieutenant governor.
All right. Dan,
Thank you. We've got to wrap up. Thank you. DanPatrick.org. Thank you for watching so many years on Channel 11, the radio, and the Senate, and I appreciate it very much. We'll work hard to earn your vote. Thank you all very much.